maybe some of the challenges, how to scale and leverage different learnings, and possibly best practices as well. And we'll look at sort of a wide range and a geographical range of where these issues are being addressed. So I have a great set of speakers today, and I apologize in advance if I don't pronounce your name correctly. So on my sheet, or actually I'll start with Carmen Gonçalves, Head of International Cyber Policy of the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands government. Thank you. Welcome. And Lillian Nawaga, is that correct? Okay, great. President of the Internet Society's Uganda chapter. I also have Belisar Contreras, yep, great. Manager, Cybersecurity Program at the Organization of American States. I have Sadie Creese, who's the founding director of the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center at the University of Oxford. And last but not least is Audrey Plump, who's the director of government and policy at Intel. So Lillian, I'd like to start with you. Let me give you a couple of questions and maybe some thoughts before we started that you can respond to. So why is cybersecurity capacity building important for bridging digital divides, and in particular in Africa, in your experience? And how can multi-stakeholder efforts actually support this, and what have you seen in Africa? Thank you.
Thanks, Dominique. I don't know if it's still morning, but yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. For this session, we hope to learn more from you than you hearing what we have to share. From the Africa perspective, one is, I think, to us to understand what is happening in Africa, or and other initiatives, is we need to understand what is cybersecurity capacity building, and more so what is cybersecurity. I know it's everyone here may have a definition. You're an expert by the virtue of fact that you're here. But when we talk about cybersecurity capacity building, we are looking at a set of initiatives that different stakeholders, from individuals, governments, private sector, need to do to realize the benefits that digital technologies offer. This is important in Africa because, one, we still have very few people who are connected, and we are talking about getting the next, I don't know, billion or whatever, 20 billion connected online, and just about 21% of the entire Africa population has access to internet. And the few, just as it sounds, 21%, the remaining, I guess, 79 still is unconnected. Whereas when we look at the few that are connected, they still have challenges in how they access the systems, the security of the systems. One, from one stakeholder group, we still have a challenge in how governments are securing critical infrastructure, or how businesses are reacting to these cybersecurity concerns. So it is important for us, coming from Africa, for us, for the new users, for the ones who are looking at to connect online, to be able to have trust in the internet, so that when they make that first click, everything is close to perfect. So one thing, when we're looking at the importance of cybersecurity capacity building, we're looking at having trust, but also when having trust, then there's also having confidence, because if we are looking at people using electronic payments, going e-commerce, and they go to use a system, and maybe a system has crashed, or there's been a report that, there's been a hack on in a particular bank, and there was nothing, loss of billions were lost, or something like that, then there's no confidence. So it is important that there's capacity built for the people who are putting in place these systems, from the banks, from the governments, but also from the users. So there's the issue of trust and confidence. And yes, so from my experience, what we are seeing happening is, I know in many in many countries right now we are seeing initiatives coming up. We are seeing governments strengthening the SATs, the Computer Emergency Response teams. From the country I come from, Uganda, we have two SATs. We have the national SAT and the sectoral SAT, and we are seeing lots of improvements, in how governments or businesses react to some of these cybercrime incidents. But going back to the issue of trust and confidence, we are seeing that when things are secure, when people have trust, then it will lead to the realization of a better digital economy. When we look at big economies like, say, in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, where these big, the faster SATs were established, we are seeing a lot of rapid economic development, economic growth in these countries. So it is important for us to have, security of systems by building resilient technology, infrastructure, and also building trust in the systems. And of course, this goes a long way into having users aware about, the different, dangers of, cybercrime, knowing about, cyber risks. So from an enabling environment in terms of legislations to having resilient infrastructure, but also the end users need to have that trust and confidence and them to be aware about the different risks.
Fantastic. Thank you. Belisara, we're going to move from Africa to your region, if that's okay. And I was wondering if you could comment a little bit on about your program and how it works with multi-stakeholders or different stakeholders, and sort of what your approach is to national and regional strategies as well. Thank you.
Well, thanks to you. And first, I would like to start thanking ICC Basis and Oxford for putting this workshop together, and actually for making sure that, well, I feel actually honored to be sharing this panel with so incredible and recognized women. So thank you very much. I really need to tell you that, well, behind institutions and behind governments, at the end, there are human beings, and we as a people working in these issues, we need to be a little bit humble and being totally honest that we have been learning through the process, through the curve. Has been over a decade that we have been working on capacity building issues in the region, and actually learning from our peers in Africa, in Europe, and Asia has been a very complicated process. It has not been very easy. Over the first years, our work was purely government focused. Actually, our first works were only focused on CSIRTs or working just on specific training, but that notion has completely changed. Now we see, for example, this year, 4 countries adopted national cybersecurity strategies through different processes, call it inclusive, multi-stakeholder, or participative process, however you want to call it, depending on of the countries. Sometimes those words are very strong, and I don't want to put them. But the thing is that we are always trying to learn from other experiences and share them with our member states. We recognize that each country, and inside actually each country, each community is totally different. We need to be very respectful of the social and economic and cultural differences that are in each country. You cannot compare, for example, a country like Mexico with Brazil or Argentina. Maybe they share that they are federal countries, but their cultural roots, their language, the economy might be totally different. Of course, I don't want to then share it with what could be applied to other European or Asian countries. Of course, there should be always basic principles that our organization shares on human rights that includes freedom of speech, privacy, gender inclusion, diversity. We are now focusing a lot on development issues, saying and trying to ask our member states don't use cybersecurity, digital security, cybercrime, information security, or however terminology you want to use on the traditional national security side, but actually try to focus on the socioeconomic development perspective, because that way you're actually going to have a better outreach of all the nation actors. Again, we are going to continue learning from you, from the private sector, from the civil society, from other regions, and I think what we are trying to do at the OAS is apply what we see that is working in other places. And I think my time is over.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping to time, too. So we're going to move from two regional perspectives to the private sector, and I wanted to ask Audrey Planck to speak a little bit about what the private sector is doing in terms of cybersecurity capacity building, especially with her experiences at Intel.
Thank you, Dominique, and good afternoon to everyone. Just a couple of things so that I can stick to my time that I wanted to highlight from the private sector perspective with regard to capacity building. This is we've been having discussions about how to build capacity for a very long time now around the world, and it's a big challenge for governments and the private sector. So from a private sector interest perspective, we are developing the products and putting them out in the environment, and we need people on the other side, whether it's in civil society or government or other companies, to be able to work with us on dealing with issues that affect multiple platforms. Very little is independent these days. All of these systems are highly integrated. The software and the hardware is highly integrated, and so when you have a problem or an issue that affects one company, it often affects many. And so we've tried to put time and effort into working with governments to develop programs, to train people, to drive cybersecurity into the education systems, all the way down from early education of children all the way up through higher education and advanced degrees and computer science programs, to include a strong curriculum in security as a function of the discipline of computer science just generally, so that it's not that cybersecurity isn't just considered this other thing, but that it's really part of all computing. And I think we generally believe that, but it is an ongoing need, and we recognize that there's always more work to be done here. And I think it's a big challenge. There's a big need in the private sector to have the same capacity, and so it's a challenge for governments to be able to keep up, particularly governments, and I'm sure to some degrees the civil society, to keep up with attracting that cybersecurity talent in the workforce and keeping them working in these other jobs. So there's several different countries that have interesting models that I'm sure we'll talk about as we move through. But I think, just want to underscore the commitment of the private sector to try to advance these programs, that some of which you've heard about and others which you will hear about, because the trust in the infrastructure and in the devices and in the digital commons that we live in is sort of the fundamental aspect of succeeding, I think, in the business and in the market. And so it's a core responsibility that I think many in the private sector feel they have.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm going to move next to Sadie Crease, who is at the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center. So I'm hoping that you can comment on sort of how you approach the multi-stakeholder model within your work, and also what your engagement is across the world and within the multi-stakeholder model across the world, and taking that where you go. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the context of our centre, one of the key aspects of our work is to champion a cybersecurity capacity maturity model, which is designed to enable nations and ultimately regions to assess what their own capacity is. It has many dimensions in terms of measuring maturity, right from startup all the way through to strategic, and it's incredibly broad in its coverage. So it will cover your ability to set policy and strategy, set law and regulation, access the right standards, technologies, education and leadership, and even broader societal, cultural aspects. And what I should say is that when we designed that, we didn't design that model in isolation in Oxford. We recognized that cybersecurity is inherently multi-stakeholder and interdisciplinary, and it was designed in partnership with stakeholders from all sectors from around the world, some of whom are sat on this table now. And that's how the model was initially conceived. And also recognizing the necessity for multi-stakeholderism in order for it to be successful, when we deploy it in countries, there is a multi-stakeholder approach. So if a country is going to assess itself and its own capacity, then what we do is we encourage them to hold focus groups, to consult widely, whether that's with civil society, with industry, with academia, with experts from government, policy setters, problem owners. They come together. It's incredibly important for the success of the assessment that you can triangulate those views. You can take account of different perspectives in terms of what's happening and truly reach a consensus on what the current level of capacity is. And then the model, of course, enables you to understand what you would need to do to grow your capacity. So that's one aspect. And in terms of how we work with our partners across the world, well, we see the centre as being the champions and the custodians of the knowledge, but this model has to be deployed in order for us to understand what's right, what needs to evolve and change, and the world is a changing place. And in order to do that, we work closely with the people that help design it and more broadly other strategic partners. So the Organization of American States will use this to help countries assess where they sit so that it could guide, amongst other things, their work on cybersecurity strategies building. We'll work with the World Bank and similar organizations who will assess countries' needs in cybersecurity in the context of their broader ICT engagements. So this is about setting cybersecurity in the broader context of what a nation is trying to do. And in today's world, we all know if you're launching banks, if you're managing water and hospitals and transport and communications, there's always a cyber element. And where there's a cyber element, there's likely a cybersecurity requirement. And so the model is helping inform needs so that when we can ensure the success of all of these kinds of ICT investments, that they move in tandem with the security needs. And just to finish up, the centre is in itself an evolving organism, not just in terms of partners from across the world, but in terms of how we ensure sustainability of this knowledge base. So we are currently in what we refer to as a transform phase, where we're building partnerships in regions with a view to ensuring the sustainability of this kind of thinking. So it's not just going to be that we champion it from Oxford, that we hope to work closely with stakeholders across all the regions to help support regional centres taking this forward, and they would in themselves build up these stakeholder networks, so eventually we have a constellation that around the globe that will move this forward.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And finally, Carmen Gonsalves from the Netherlands government is going to talk a little bit about why it's important to strengthen the multi-stakeholder model in this area, probably building on a lot of what you've already heard, and what are some of the lessons you've learned in your center as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominique. Thank you. Well, a lot of very insightful remarks have already been made, and what I can add to that from the Netherlands is a bit of a short peek into our own history, to explain why, when we came to realize how important multi-stakeholderism is to cybersecurity. Every new policy development of some importance, of course, is often rooted in a landmark event that triggers a reaction. In our case, in the area of cybersecurity, that happened in the year 2011 when the certificate authority, DG Notar, experienced a very serious security breach, resulting in the fraudulent issuance of certificates, affecting not only the Netherlands, also other countries, but in the Netherlands it affected a large part of the private sector and a huge part of the public sector and government. And when we tackled this crisis, we very much, as a government, we discovered that working closely together with other stakeholders, with the private sector, academia, the tech community, was quintessential to overcoming the challenges. And that helped us in our process to working to the next level of maturity in cybersecurity. And then in 2015, when we had the opportunity to organize the next conference in the process, in the London process, the global conference on cyberspace, we took the opportunity together with the participants in the GCCS to establish an international flexible, action-oriented, multi-stakeholder platform, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. This global forum that now, a couple of years after, only 2.5 years after it came in existence, already counts 60 members, states, international organizations, representatives of private sector, working together closely with civil society. This Global Forum on Cyber Expertise was meant to enhance this international exchange of best practices and expertise in the area of cybersecurity, involving indeed all these important quintessential stakeholders. Identifying successful policies and then multiplying these, that is the goal and still is the goal. GFCE thus taps into all these sources of expertise, civil society, research institutions, technical communities, and effectively also, of course, engaging with individual users as well. Well, while engaging in these capacity building exercises, we also became even more convinced that capacity building in cybersecurity is not only there for the sake of cybersecurity itself, but it is a precondition for the other big challenge, bridging this digital divide that we are still coping with in the world. Because it has already been said by Liliane, among others, that in order to reap the benefits of digitalization, economic growth fueled by the digital economy, etc., trust is absolutely fundamental. And the only way we can ensure that we build this trust is by upping cybersecurity, and by doing that in a multi-stakeholder fashion. So indeed, that's why we are more and more convinced that we should try to get to work together in a multi-stakeholder fashion internationally. We take pride in the fact that the GFCE works together closely with regional organizations like the African Union, like the Organization of American States, and others. And we just hope that this network of interlocking and initiatives in capacity building will strengthen itself, and then together reach a next level of maturity. I think this is for my initial remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I know you have to leave a bit early, right? So if there's anything else
Yeah.
you want
The only thing I would like to add is that we recently were able in Delhi during the global conference on cyberspace held there, together with all the members of the GFCE community, to bring our thoughts about what we could do next in the area of global capacity building to a next level. We identified, we together developed a global agenda for global capacity building, and added to that a guide with global good practices. The idea is that based on that agenda, which has identified 5 priority themes: cybersecurity policy and strategy, incident management and infrastructure protection, cybercrime, cybersecurity culture and skills, and finally, last but not least, cybersecurity standards, that around this agenda, based on 5 pillars, we will try to foster cooperation and coordination worldwide in the years to come. And we very much thank all our partners who worked with us in drawing up this agenda, and we're now going to try to take the work forward as energetically as we can, taking everybody, all the ideas of the whole community on board. So an open standing invitation to share your ideas with us. But we definitely will present you with new ideas on how to engage further soon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So already we can see some very common themes coming through. I would say trust, education, awareness, and the participation of all stakeholders, meaning, with different sort of abilities and different experiences as well. So what I'm going to do now, we're running right on time, is to start the breakout group discussion. And I'd like to see if we can get one group in this row of desks, one group here, and one group here. Each group has a set of questions, but also can, discuss other things as well. So there's no specific theme to each group. And please, everyone on the side, join, I guess, a different group, if that works as well. And then 2 of us each will join into that group. So we'll have until about, let's think, 20 till, quarter till, to discuss. And then basically I'll ask one of you to report back on your discussions. The speakers will obviously lead some of the discussions further as well. Is there anything else that I need to, is that? Oh, okay, great. Thank you for asking. So can we go ahead and do that and try to get into each different groups and see how that goes? Great.
One here, one here, other.
Yeah, so one table, and one table. And there's a lot more people over on this side, so I'd say kind of huddle around each other. I've never done this before, so I'm not sure how it's going to work. And you're all feel free to join whatever group.
Didn't say anyone is supposed to leave. How many groups? There are 3?
There are 3, so I think who's going here?
Don't leave yet.
I'll follow that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Is there one there?
I think you're going there.
dit quelque chose. Voilà.
La session.
Oui.
J'ai des questions.
Okay, come in who are like confused. Thanks so much.
microphones everywhere, don't they, for great pictures.
They're broken into syndicate groups. Yes. What is the question?
Put all the pieces of paper in the hardest place to reach.
It happens.
So these are the.
Now, we probably should divide ourselves among so we don't delude one group.
Yeah, sure. So I think, feel free to say excuse me to people and just walk around.
Which group do you want to do? Well, how do we know the topic? No, they're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same, and these are just more guides.
It's just rather than
Just
all
people
of us
sharing their
jumping in at the
experiences
end.
about
We can
cybersecurity.
spread out our own shit.
Yeah, and where are you?
Oh, thank you. Hold on. Sophie, like Sophie Strauss.
Maybe you want to go.
For the
evaluation.
verified,
Of course not. No. Yeah,
from the reporting now.
yeah, and then yeah. So hello, everybody. Sorry to interrupt. Just to let you know that we're going to have to report back soon. So, ready to report back? Okay.
All right, can everybody sort of pick someone to report back, not a speaker necessarily? And then we can hear, we had a really good discussion, but then we can hear from each of you where, sort of what your discussion was. I might start with our group.
Okay. Some groups are still discussing.
10 minutes more? Because we're finishing in about 20 minutes, so 25 minutes. Did you get through all the questions or no? You don't have to. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Great, your colleague represented you, so.
Yeah, Audrey, sorry. All right. Okay. Has I can use this. Has everyone sort of picked out a person or nominated a person to speak? I think I might start with my group because we already know who's going to speak. Do you want to go ahead and kind of give a bit of a summary of what we did? Okay.
So in our group, we went through the questions and kind of found that we were answering most of them at the same time as we discussed. And we had a really interesting mix of stakeholders in the group, which was great. I think the biggest things that we took away from this, though, was that we need a lot more research on the initiatives that are already going on in cybersecurity and what the effect is. So we need information on, what is this problem, what will expanded projects actually do, and how effective have they been? And that's going to help governments especially figure out what kind of resources they can allot to this work. We also discussed the need for a multi-stakeholder approach. This is not something that any one issue group can fix on its own. And so we need to work together as civil society, government, industry, and international actors. There's also a huge need for education and training, and every country in the world is going to need to do this, and we need to work together to share best practices and resources so that we can all progress together. Let me see. I think those are our biggest things. There are programs going on that need to be expanded, increase the evidence of how more education can actually reduce cyber harm and how reducing cyber harm actually decreases digital divide, especially because these things we think of as common sense but aren't measured, and needs more technical capacity building. So there's, especially in the United States, there's a big gap between the work that needs to be done and the people with the technical skills to fill that work. That's what I took from it. Yeah. Did I miss anything?
Okay.
It's going to be very brief. So the lack of cybersecurity capacity building and awareness, it could lead to we have to raise awareness, and then also the infrastructure development, it could be hurt as well. So, and the second one is the cyber capacity building challenges. Main challenges that we have discussed here is the support from the government on the awareness raising of the cybersecurity capacity building, as well as the cooperation between regional and then as well as the international community. So perhaps we discuss about following these international cybersecurity standards, and then to tackle it locally on these issues. And the solution is to first we have to assess the maturity of the country, maturity of cybersecurity, maturity of the country, and then also based on that we have to follow the international standards and norms. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's it. If I miss anything, and you can feel free to add.
Okay, thank you. And the final group, who is reporting back?
Yeah. So basically, well, there was a lot of participation. The group mentioned a lot that there is a real lack of awareness at all levels. Participants from the civil society or the NGO community says that actually there is a lack of awareness at the NGO community. There was a case, for example, in a specific country in Africa where half or a big region of the country shut down internet for 3 months, and there was no response from nor the national nor international NGO community on that. Some participants mentioned that they are not sure about discuss about digital divides and cybersecurity. Others say that, for example, cybersecurity could be understood as a luxury while access is still a challenge. So that's something that we still need to work out, maybe to embed cybersecurity still on all the access. Other representatives mentioned about how to be careful on how to raise this awareness and selling in the good sense cybersecurity. Sometimes the language is to focus on risk, and that sometimes at the same time it's letting the people not actually using that much the technology. It was pointed out that, of course, one of the main challenges that the community face, the overall community face, are resources, both financial and expertise resources. That there could be many things to be done, but resources are needed. There are, of course, several suggestions. One of the suggestions was on definitions, starting with common understanding, but at the same time, that common understanding or that common definition need to be somehow flexible, and we don't need to impose definitions. That the best thing to start doing is adapting this language to the different cultures or regions. So far it was kind of a dynamic table. I don't know if anyone wants to add something else that I'm missing.
Actually, does anyone have any sort of initial reactions or responses from any of the comments that were made? There seem to be quite similar, and some of the same issues keep coming up all over again. Anybody have any thoughts? I'll also open it up to the panelists if any of you have any additional thoughts.
Yeah, I do. Great. One of my initial thoughts, having been in the room, and thank you, it's been a great session, is that we entered the room today convinced that multi-stakeholder was incredibly important to building cybersecurity capacity. And I think I leave the room with that reinforced, but very specifically around this issue of the differences across regions and cultures and countries. And I think, Belly, you made the point from the panel earlier that there's a necessity to respect those differences, but it's more than that, isn't it? We will fail if what we do in cybersecurity capacity building is not able to be tailored to the needs, because what we keep hearing around the room is that one of the key aspects we lack is awareness and knowledge. And actually that's crucial at all levels, all the way up through to expertise, even amongst the professional community, which standard to use, what's appropriate. That's different to the kind of awareness that you just want an individual who's got access to a mobile phone to have, so that they can stay safe and secure and not let their phone become a platform for attack against other parts of your system. It seems to me, and it's reinforced for me today, the necessity for success will be to develop solutions that are culturally sensitive, and therefore we have to not only do that in a multi-stakeholder way, but we will have to do that in a globally multi-stakeholder way. Otherwise, we will actually be doomed to failure.
My observation from listening to the stories is that we're dealing with a wide range of issues today in cybersecurity, and they range from technical capacity to manage networks and manage traffic and mitigate attack and address the need for sort of standard practice and updating and patching systems and keeping them in a good state, to these issues of, social media and social norms and transfer of data and information, and further on the concepts of privacy and protection of data. And I think to me, I've been in this cybersecurity space for a long time now, and it feels like we've really matured the conversation to recognize the interdependencies between these issues, that they're not, that you need you need the technical capacity to do what I was just describing about the network, to drive a better standard and a better process around privacy and data. And so, but it is a huge set of issues, and everybody approaches them somewhat differently, different countries, different organizations. And so I think this particular dialogue was very useful. I just wish we had no, it's not your fault. I just wish we had a little bit more time in the groups. I think it's a good feedback for the organizers that we can put into our report, that there was much more willingness to share than we may have expected. And so I just want to thank my group for that, because they were really very open, and we learned a lot. So thank you.
Maybe just to build up on Citi's comment, I think the other maybe takeaway for this process and the description of the workshop is, as we continue working on building this digital device through the cybersecurity capacity building, which is the purpose, is actually that all the actors, we need to know our respective role. Civil society, private sector, academia, technical community, and the governments, everyone, we should understand what's our role, and not sometimes don't pretend or don't try to fulfill the seat of each other. Because sometimes when you cross the limits, or they want to start doing functions that maybe are functions when the private sector, academy, or someone wants to do functions of the government, or vice versa, that's when maybe sometimes some issues arise. So walking through this process is very important to understand the role and respect each other, and I think that would be a very fruitful process in the years to come.
For me, everyone has said it, the need for identifying the different stakeholders and the actors, but still goes back to the multi-stakeholder mode of addressing cybersecurity concerns. What I found interesting is we always have this view that, in the developed countries, things are fine. And in my group, we had different cases from UK and the US, and we usually look up to these countries and think that things, are fine. And what was interesting to hear that even if there's a lot that is being done, there's still a lot that can be done. So for me, it's something that when we look back to the developing countries and Africa in particular, we have lots of lessons to learn. And I think someone, I don't know if he's still in the room from my group from the US, said that as we try to get more people online, I think in Africa we still have an opportunity to be able to mitigate some of these risks and, create more awareness other than, waiting for people to connect and then try to address these concerns. So I think, concluding, I would say that cybersecurity is a global concern for everyone. And of course, like it has already been said, every actor has a different role to play. But respecting each and every actor's role is key, but also respecting the context in which we're trying to address some of these things is also important. So putting all this together, I'm sure involves a lot of work, but where we've reached now, I think we're trying to find a path to addressing this. So it will be interesting to see what 2018 brings in bringing together all these different aspects of managing cybersecurity.
Actually, that's a really positive way to, I would think, to end the panel. We're a bit early, but I'm sure many of you are quite hungry as well. No, I really appreciate all of you being here and staying here and trying out our format, which I think you developed, and it works quite well. And any feedback on that, you know, from Audrey or anyone else would be great. Because we were trying to do, you know, a bit more than just the standard talking and questions. So I think it worked out pretty well. So I thank all of you for participating, and also I thank our panelists very, very much for being here. And our moderator. I have the easy jobs. No, thank you very much. And please feel free to continue the conversation as well. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, hello everybody. If you're here for the Igf Newcomers Track, then you're in the right place. And if you're not here for the Newcomers Track, then would you be so kind to take your conversation outside the room, please? Excuse me, are you here for the Newcomers Track? Anybody here for sorry, okay, sorry, excuse me. Anybody here for the Newcomers Track, please? And if you're not here for the Newcomers Track, then can you please take it outside? Thank you. Sorry. Hi, hello, sorry.
Hi, man. Oh yeah, now with
Cool. Welcome. Thank you. Maybe there's nobody. We'll see. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Well, I don't know who is here for the Igf Newcomers Track and who is not. So either please stay or please move on. But of course, please stay. Don't move on because the room's empty almost. So who is here for the Igf Newcomers Track? Anybody? Put your hands up. Nobody? Okay, that's great. I can leave early. Maybe we stay a few minutes, and if nobody comes, then we say thank you and goodbye. No? You're okay. Good. Because it starts at 1:15 and it finishes at 2.
Anya should be coming here as well.
Who?
Anya.
Anya, yeah, I hope so. So we'll give it some minutes because I think we need to fill up the room with lots of people. That's fine by me, but we just wait a minute or two for the rushes of people coming through the door. Yes, and so on that, thank you. On that note, my name is hello, welcome. This is the Igf Newcomers Track. Is that? Yes. Okay, good. No, just. So, are you part of the Newcomers Track? Are you?
I'm kind of co-organizing it with Anya.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, good. Do you want to say some words first of all?
Well, it was not planned. But
Okay. Well, I'll start. Slobodan maybe will come in, but we're so few that we'll just have a conversation. This is. Come closer if you can, if you want. We have until 2 o'clock at the latest. This is the Igf Newcomers Track, and this is, of course, as a sort of a basic introduction of different viewpoints, perspectives of those who've been around a bit longer, which is me, about what Internet Governance Forum has done, where it goes, what's my perspective. My name is Lee Hibbard. I am. Come. My name is Lee Hibbard. I'm from the Council of Europe, which is an intergovernmental organization, and we're looking today at the perspective of the intergovernmental organizations about IGF, what IGF does. So I'm just going to share some views. Please, welcome. Sit down, please. Thank you. No, that's okay. We're just starting. We don't have very long, and really I'm going to shut up very quickly, and we're going to have a discussion, basically questions and answers. About what you want to know. I can hopefully try to help you. Slobodan, you're on the mag. I'd like you to give 1 or 2 words before we start.
yeah, just wanted to basically say hello and welcome. Really, nothing much to say apart that this week we organizing a series of meetings with the different stakeholder groups for the people who are here for the first time sitting in this room and also on the internet stream watching this, to have a chance to meet the representatives of different stakeholder groups and to see what are the key topics which are relevant for them in the IGF, what are the key debates, and how to basically engage with their communities, the ways of engagement. So yesterday we had a discussion with a representative of the technical and business communities. Today we have representatives of the government and the international organizations. And tomorrow in this room we will have representatives of the civil society, while on Thursday we will have a discussion on youth engagement and engagement in general in the intersessional work of the IGF. So welcome, and
Okay.
you can continue.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be very short. I'll be very to the point. I'll give you a 5-minute introduction about what I do, why am I here, why have I been here for so many years in these internet governance forums, which is for the whole period, and then we'll go open to you, and let me ask you what you want to know. My name's Lee Hibbard. I'm from the Council of Europe. It's an intergovernmental organization, so it sits above the governments in Europe, 47 countries, and it has the European Court of Human Rights, and the focus we have on internet in the work of this organization is human rights, rule of law, democracy. So for the last 10 years, I have been looking at these issues with my colleagues and trying to understand what's different about human rights, rule of law, democracy, because of the advent of the internet, because of the advent of cyber, of technology, the speed. How is it affecting human rights? How do human rights have to evolve to cope? Because we can talk extensively about what's changing in society. There was a big session in that main room 17 earlier about democracy, how democracy is being affected by technology, trust, these issues of trust, of accountability. We know these things, but there has been a fundamental shift, as we all know, in how our lives are changing. And our values are being affected by tech, by internet, by all of these different things that we are here to talk about, data in particular. So, so we have been grappling, trying to understand, and trying to fit, and trying to encourage, an evolution of human rights, rule of law, democracy. So maintaining values, making sure that people don't get lost, that the center of attention on internet is the person, making sure that people have their rights online, that they can still rely upon them, that their governments still protect them, and then they work out new solutions for them where they are difficult to protect, safeguard. That means working with companies. That means trying to understand how the rule of law is affected online, because everything is cross-border. So how do you do things when the perpetrators are not even on your territory? How do national governments, prosecutors, how do you manage when it's cross-border? That's a challenge which is ongoing. And as I said in the room earlier, a discussion about democracy, how it's being affected by the speed of change, is really challenging how we understand democracy. Some would say fake news, some would say information disorder. How do you manage these really fast-changing things which are affecting people's minds, but also their emotions? And so, to conclude, I mean, for example, I've been to all the internet governance forums since the beginning, 2006, except for one. And we've always been very active. I've seen a great... When I first started coming to these events, these global discussions, people were going to me, human rights, that's been done. We did that in the WSIS. We did that before. It was written in the text. We respect these things, etc. No. It was the beginning it was the end of the beginning. And we really are now, and it happens again and again. People keep coming back they understand that society is hugely affected and challenged by companies, by the leaking of data, the questions of privacy, the questions of expression, censorship, of crime, and they become ever more important because we need to not lose the center, which is the person. You know, it's a people-centered internet, and you know, there's a lot of permissionless innovation by companies. But I mean, some would say that, you know, the internet has been the Wild West. It's been very free, no regulation, etc., etc. And you know, we live in societies whereby there is regulation. Of course, we all know that. But have we lost that sense of frame, that sense of established rules and norms online? And so that's the things that we've been looking at over the years. Over the next 4 days, I'll just give you a snapshot. This was in the packs. This is what we're doing here.